Welcome to TopSpot40 Music Docuseries, where we bring the stories behind the music to life.
Here's the narration text. Imagine waking up on a lazy Sunday morning, the smell of coffee drifting from the kitchen, and there it was, that warm, familiar voice drifting through the radio. It felt like an old friend had stopped by just to catch you up on what the whole country was listening to. For millions of Americans over 3 decades, that voice was Casey Kasem, the man who turned the countdown into a national ritual and made America's Top 40 the soundtrack of our weekends. Casey didn't set out to become radio royalty. Born in Detroit in 1932 to Lebanese immigrant parents, he grew up in a household where music and storytelling were everyday currencies. His father ran a grocery store, and young Kamal Amin Kasem, as he was named at birth, absorbed the rich sounds of the Arabic music his parents loved alongside the big band swing and early rock and roll pouring out of American radios. That blend of cultures would later give his delivery a gentle, worldly warmth that felt both authoritative and approachable. After serving in the Army and studying radio announcing in college, Casey bounced around small stations in Michigan, Ohio, and California. He paid his dues spinning records and reading news, but it was his unmistakable voice, that smooth baritone with just a hint of Midwestern sincerity, that started opening doors. By the late 1960s, he was doing voice work for commercials and cartoons. A whole generation grew up hearing him as Shaggy on Scooby-Doo without ever realizing the same man was about to change radio forever. The big idea arrived in 1970. Casey, along with his partner Don Bastani and a few other creative minds, wondered what would happen if someone took the Billboard chart, counted it down from number 40 to number 1, and wrapped each song in stories, trivia, and personal dedications. No one had ever done it quite like that. On July 4th, 1970, the very first episode of American Top 40 aired on just 7 stations. Within a few years, it would be heard on hundreds of stations across the country and around the world, from military bases in Vietnam to living rooms in small-town Iowa. There was something magical about the way Casey presented those countdowns. He never rushed. He let the songs breathe. Between the hits, he'd share how a young singer from Michigan named Madonna was climbing the chart with her very first top 10 record, or how a quiet ballad by the Eagles had captured the loneliness so many Americans felt in the 1970s. He made you feel the music had a story worth knowing. One week he might tell you that the saxophone solo on Baker Street was played by a session musician who earned just $50 for it. The next week he'd deliver a long-distance dedication, reading a heartfelt letter from a soldier overseas to his sweetheart back home, then playing the song she had requested. Those dedications became legendary. People wrote in by the thousands, pouring their hearts onto paper, trusting Casey to deliver their messages with dignity and care. His sign-off became a benediction for a generation. Keep your feet on the ground and keep reaching for the stars. Spoken in that reassuring tone, it felt less like a catchy slogan and more like gentle fatherly advice. Parents trusted him. Teenagers felt understood by him. Even when disco gave way to new wave and synthesizers flooded the airwaves, Casey remained the calm center, guiding listeners through the changes with grace and curiosity. Of course, the voice that counted down the hits was the same voice that told us to like Zoinks as Shaggy, that narrated countless commercials, and that could sell us anything from breakfast cereal to automobiles with complete sincerity. Casey understood the power of radio intimacy. He once said he tried to speak to every listener as if they were sitting across the table from him. That one-on-one connection turned American Top 40 into something bigger than a chart show. It became a weekly gathering place for a nation. Through the 1970s and 1980s, the program's reach was staggering. At its peak, more than 500 stations carried the show in the United States alone, and it was translated and broadcast in dozens of countries. Kids in assisted living facilities today still light up when they hear an old episode because it takes them straight back to their youth, to Saturday night dances, first dates in convertibles, and Sunday mornings when the whole family slowed down long enough to listen together. But success came with pressure. The weekly deadlines were relentless. Casey was known for his perfectionism, spending hours researching each fact, practicing every transition until it felt natural. Behind the calm voice was a man who cared deeply about getting it right. When he finally stepped away from the original American Top 40 in 1988, it was like losing an old friend. Radio simply didn't sound the same without him. In later years, he continued voicing beloved characters and even returned to Countdown Radio in the 1990s with Casey Kasem's Top 40. Through every chapter, his fundamental belief remained unchanged. Music has the power to connect us. Whether it was a Motown classic, a power ballad, or an early hip-hop track finding its way onto the chart, Casey treated every song with respect. He understood that behind every record was a human story, an artist who had poured their soul into 3 minutes of vinyl. When we look back now, Casey Kasem's greatest gift wasn't just his remarkable voice or his flawless timing. It was the way he made millions of strangers feel like they belonged to the same family, the same moment in time. In an age when music often feels fragmented across countless streaming services and algorithms, his countdowns remind us of a simpler, more unified era when everyone from grandmother to grandson could gather around the radio and discover they were all humming the same tune. So the next time you hear an oldie station or catch a rerun of Scooby-Doo, listen for that familiar warmth. That's Casey, still reaching for the stars, still keeping our feet gently on the ground, still reminding us that the music we love is so much more than just notes and beats. It's the thread that stitches generations together, and Casey Kasem spent a lifetime weaving that thread with patience, kindness, and a voice we'll never forget.
Thank you for joining us for TopSpot40 Music docuseries. Discover all the stories behind the music at TopSpot40.com. Until next time, keep the music playing.